It is time for our August reading wrap-up. This month I read 14 books for a total of 4,273 pages. Pretty gosh darn good. Not my record for the year yet, but pretty gosh darn close, so I'm calling it good. It was a very well-rounded reading month in the sense that I had every type of book imaginable. I had some books that I really enjoyed, I had some books that I thought were more middle of the road, and I definitely had books that I did not think were really worth my time or yours, but I read them anyway. If you've been here before, then you know how this works. Basically, I divide up my reads into books that I thought are worthy of your time and your money. I call those buy it books. Then I move on to books that I think are worth a read. They're enjoyable, but they're not like amazing, but still definitely worth checking out if you're interested in them. I call those borrow it books. And then lastly, I talk about the books that I call skip it books, books that I did not think were worth anyone's time, definitely not your money, and books that you should just skip in favor of hopefully better reads. Feel free to stay in this video for as long or as little as you'd like. If you just want the best of the best, then just watch the beginning. But if you want to stick around and see what books you might want to borrow it or skip over the next few months, keep an eye out when you're shopping, then definitely stay to the end. Either way, it's up to you. Good to see you. Let's get into this thing. First up in my buy it section is Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech. This is a Newbery Medal winning book from my generation, I guess. Does that make me sound old? Apparently this was really popular when I was a kid, but I didn't hear of it or anything until I stumbled across it earlier this year at a library book sale. This was $1, so score for me. I did a whole separate video on my review and love of this book, but I'll just say this book is a new favorite of mine. I plan to read it again and again. I think it's one of those books that goes to show that just because a book is simply written and written for children, it doesn't mean it can't be just as epic and emotional and heartwarming as a lengthy adult fiction. At its basic, it is about a young girl who is on a road trip with her grandparents, and now she tells one story about a very strange friend of hers. She ends up telling the story of herself, and it made me cry, it made me laugh. It was wonderful and whimsical and perfection. I can't wait to read it again. Next on my buy it list is Past Perfect Life by Elizabeth Eulberg. I was so surprised by how much I enjoyed reading this, but golly, I really, really did. This was one of my picks for Book of the Month Club YA, and I had very low, or not really low, but I just didn't know what to expect when I went into it, and I freaking loved it. It's about a girl named Allie who is a senior in high school. She's planning to go to college, and she has this simple life with her single dad who she loves to death, and they're in this small little town and everything's cozy and wonderful. But as she submits information for her college application, she gets a hit back on her social security number that her name and her social security number don't add up. And basically everything she thought she knew about herself and her life was a lie, and it's just like a crazy story, but in the midst of it, there's great characters, and I was super invested in it, so I highly recommend this one. Totally check it out if you like contemporary young adult. Do it. So good. Next on my buy it list is an audiobook that I was a little late to the party for, but what are you gonna do? It was Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance. Now, this is about Appalachia, which is actually where I was born and raised, honey, and proud of it. I will say, though, that whenever books are written about that culture or that area, which I'll be honest is a very vast area, okay? Appalachia stretches far. So whenever someone's talking about it, please keep in mind that there are a bunch of subcultures within that, but there are some defining qualities that really do help to encompass everyone who lives in that region. It's a hard place. It's a very sheltered place. It's harsh. People there are harsh, but also extremely, extremely kind. And I think a lot of rumors circulate around Appalachia, but some of them are true. Some of them are just wildly ridiculous, and lots of outsiders have a hard time understanding it because it's a contradictory thing. Like when I was growing up, you can't get a compliment without having an insult thrown in. So it's just like, I think it's hard to grasp if you're not familiar with it. For some people, it just seems very foreign, which, hey, I get it. It's kind of like New York in a way where I guess you can love New York and admire New York and have ideas about it, but nobody really gets New York like New Yorkers. Same thing. You probably remember seeing this novel around, and what JD is doing is essentially talking about this Appalachian culture that's in crisis and these communities that for some strange reason have really been neglected in the media. They're not really talked about, but there are some serious issues going on that have been in progress probably for the last 40-ish years, and we could talk forever about the possible causes and possible solutions, but what JD is doing is essentially sharing just his story. And I really appreciated that. He does share his insights and his ideas about the causes and what could possibly help to fix it, but he's not preaching. He's just saying, hey, here's like an insider's explanation of this area in America, and I thought it was fantastic. Sometimes I felt like he was talking directly to me, and for once, somebody got the culture right. He talked about hillbilly law, he talked about the strange moral code that we have, which makes perfect sense to us, but maybe not to other people, how it's, like as I said, how it's harsh but very kind, how it's kind of closed off to outsiders, but at the same time, people will do anything to help another person out. Like it's very contradictory. And I just thought he did a great job expressing it, and I think he did a great job explaining it. So if you're curious about that topic at all, definitely check the book out, but just remember that he's talking about a very specific area of Appalachia and his own experiences. So, I mean, everybody's experience is going to be different. Different sections of that region are different, but it was still fantastic. And I hope that more people will read it because it's one of the few books that are done well about where I come from. Next on my buy it list was another book I was really late to the party on, but I thought was great. It was the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, and I genuinely had no idea what it was about, other than it was set in World War II. I just got it from the library on a whim and thought, what the heck? And it was so cute. It was so adorable. I almost couldn't believe how much I liked it, and I'm glad I went in knowing nothing, if that makes sense. In case you're not familiar with it, it's essentially a collection of fictional letters about a writer who discovers a literary club that had taken place during the occupation of Guernsey, and she begins exchanging letters with them, and it's sort of like a book about books and about loving books and about literature, which is surprisingly hard to pull off. All book lovers seem to gravitate towards those type of stories, but very few books actually pull it off and really handle the atmosphere and the coziness of reading and what it means to different people. I laughed out loud reading that book. I got a little teary-eyed, and it was frankly just really freaking cute. So if you didn't read that and you like World War II stuff, you like just coziness, then definitely check it out. It had a little bit of romance in it, but not ever in an overbearing, annoying way, you know, by my standards. And if you don't know already, I don't read much romance. So for me, like the meter is pretty, like I don't like it. So it's a subtle, cute romance and not anything too intense at all. Just think kind of like picture perfect adorableness. And that's basically what you've got. And that's told through these great layerings of other characters and other stories, and I just really enjoyed it. I might read it again one day. Next on my buy it list is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. I was so excited to have the new Ruth Ware, even though in the past I have enjoyed some of her books and not enjoyed others of her books. So I didn't know which way this was going to go, but to me this was very much in the style of The Woman in Cabin 10 and In a Dark, Dark Wood, which is sort of like a modern gothic mystery with Ruth Ware's unique style. And it was exactly what I was looking for. It was fast-paced, it was kind of atmospheric, it had new stuff, it had old stuff, it was a nod to the classics without being overdone at all. It's just a very approachable writing style that's just fun for a mystery addict to read. It was really just fun. It was just a fun book. I read it pretty quickly in like 24 hours or so because it was just fun. It was just fun. And I hope if you like her books, this was definitely a good one. But if you are the opposite of me and you liked The Death of Mrs. Westaway, then this is probably not the book for you. The Death of Mrs. Westaway is the one Ruth Ware book I did not like very much at all. So people tend to be opposites on her. So if you didn't like The Death of Mrs. Westaway, you're probably going to like this. And, you know, opposites are true also. Okay, I know I said in another video that I was going to read new classics and not keep rereading stuff, but I lied to you. I lied to myself because guess what? I reread Lord of the Rings again. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say except that I'm not sorry. It was perfection as always. Every time I read it, it gets better. And I read book 1, by the way, Fellowship of the Ring. So that means this year I have reread The Fellowship of the Ring and I have reread Return of the King. And I don't know. I don't plan on reading the second book, but it might just happen accidentally, like it always seems to. So obviously that goes in my buy it section, but you know, I can't help myself. Next up in my buy it section was a book that really surprised me. It's I Have No Secrets by Penny Jolson. This is from Sourcebooks Fire, their YA line. This is a very small little mystery. It's a young adult. It's I would say young adult. I think there should be like a distinction between the two. So it's definitely not for teenagers, but maybe a 12 or 13-year-old, 14-year-old maybe would super enjoy this. And I mean, I enjoyed it as an adult, so don't let me dissuade you. I'm just saying, reading level wise, that's where it's at. What really makes this book super good was Gemma's voice, the main character's voice. She kind of narrates the whole thing and it feels so real, just a breeze to read. It's like fun to know her. The story centers around Gemma, who has a condition where her body does not function as yours and I's might, but her mind is fully functioning. But the problem is the real frustration here is that she can't communicate. She can't say yes or no. She doesn't have any control over her muscles. So while her mind is fully aware and very observant and knowing, she cannot communicate those things to anyone else. In the town where she lives with her family, a murder has taken place, and that murderer has made a kind of confession to Gemma because he doesn't think that Gemma can ever say anything to anybody. Imagine how terrifying that would be. Like, this is a really great premise and so good. But anyways, Gemma gets access to this new technology, which allows her to start communicating. And now she has to find a way to say what she needs to say before the killer realizes she can now communicate and comes after her. So it's a really small book. It's really fast to read. I think it's great for adults. I think it's great for young adults. I think it's great for kids because the author did something really great here where she expressed what it might be like to live under those circumstances, but in an approachable way. So Gemma's voice is so authentic and real and like anybody else you would know, and they share her struggles without being like pandering, if that makes sense. I feel like a lot of authors and movies even get it wrong, which is so frustrating, but I really feel like she did a great job, as good as anyone could, expressing that. And I think it's great to have that mystery aspect, which is really fun, but also for kids and adults alike to get to have their eyes open to a different life experience. And I just thought it was great. It like really surprised me. I didn't have any high expectations going into this, but it was great. It really was. Last up on my buy it list is Rustic Joyful Food, My Heart's Table. This is actually a cookbook, which I don't usually read cover to cover, but I actually did quite a few times on this one. I've already tried tomato soup. I've already tried a salad that was in there, biscuits, and I plan to try more. It was super fun. She has some unique ideas. She's so funny on Instagram, and I just had fun with it. I had fun reading it. I think it's a good cookbook. I have a few notes in the sense for you, like if you're new to cooking, this might not be the best one for you because the instructions are very simplistic. So while they're good ideas, you kind of need to know a little bit of what you're doing going into it, because she's not gonna like hold your hand and give you 5 pages of detailed instructions. I kind of like that because it makes everything seem more approachable to make. But, you know, I just wanted to say that in case you're new to cooking. So I don't usually talk about cooking or cookbooks in my wrap-ups, but here it is. This came out from Source Books again, and yeah, really good. Check her out on Instagram too. She's so funny. I love her Goodwill highlights. You have to watch those. I've never felt so alive. So that is it for my Buy It books. If you just wanted the best of the best, then go ahead and head on out of here. Drop me a comment below and I'll see you next time. But if you do want to know the Borrow It books, what books I thought were fine but not amazing, so that you can know what to buy or not buy when you're book shopping, then stick around and let's get into it. First up on my Borrow It list is House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin Craig. This was a really tricky one to rate, and that's why it's near the top of my list between Borrow It and Buy It. I still think it's a Borrow It book, but it was so close to being amazing, and parts of it I really, really loved. She did such great world building. She really did this unique thing where it was like her own style, but I could also see hints of Meyer and Schwab in there, other great YA, like fairy tale-esque fantasy writers, but somehow it like wasn't quite complete, and I think it's just hard to fit a whole world and a whole plot into 400 pages of YA text where the font's bigger and everything. So some connections towards the beginning and the end didn't quite come full circle. She set up the world, but she didn't set up the myth all the way, but the myth was really important to the plot at the end. So it was just kind of like so freaking close. I would totally read her work again, and I actually really would love her to write a full-on adult fantasy and get the opportunity to do really lengthy books with all the detail, because I think she has it, man. Like, I think she has it. But this book just wasn't as full circle, fully complete as it could have been, but I still loved parts of it, so it was really hard. It was really hard for me to rate. But at the same time, I just couldn't give it 4 stars because it just wasn't there yet, if that makes sense. Next up on my borrow it list is a kind of a coffee table book. It's The Little Book of Lost Words, Collywobbles, Snollygosters, and 86 Other Surprisingly Useful Terms Worth Resurrecting. I love books like this. This is not my first foray into this type of thing, so I just can't resist. I can't resist to get them. It's so fun, and they're fun to leave on your table for people to pick up and enjoy and flip through. For me, this is a borrow it book for a few reasons. A, it's just like super simplistic. There's a really like 3-page introduction, but I feel like it could have done more to explain the purpose and the origin of this book. And also the entries themselves, while they are cute and fun, they're all accompanied with a painting and then the pronunciation and an example sentence. So it's got like good bones. I felt like A, it could have been longer, and B, my main complaint with this was that the example sentences are kind of politically geared, which I think is going to date the book in an unflattering way, and it's kind of frustrating and annoying to me to read. I don't like those sort of insinuations, because to me, I'm just trying to pick up a book on funny lost words, okay? I don't need a like political joke thrown in every other word, you know? It just doesn't seem necessary to me, and again, I just think it's going to age it, so in like 10 years, this sitting around, you know, it just kind of is a disservice, and I just wish they'd gone with more whimsical, fun examples that didn't have anything to do with anything other than fun whimsy of words. But it didn't. So for me, it was a borrow it book. It's not amazing. It could have been, but it's not. Last on my borrow it list is this little book from Sourcebooks, again, Attention Management, How to Create Success and Gain Productivity Every Day. Now this is kind of tricky to rate, but I stand by what I'm about to say because I didn't realize that these are part of a series designed to be extremely, extremely short books that you can read, I think, in an hour. I didn't know that when I ordered it. So that's kind of totally actually my fault on that side, but on the other side, I still think everything I thought about it is completely valid. And that was that the premise is really good. Her premise is basically that time management books and articles and such are outdated because it's not time we're trying to manage anymore, it's attention. So she's talking about attention from this constant connectivity we have, whether that's your email and your social accounts, but also open offices and how you can't just sit and focus and get into flow as easily as you can. While I think that's a great premise and I was very interested in that topic, the book itself, frankly, could have been a long blog post, and it really reads that way. It reads as if it's promotional material in a strange way, where she keeps saying, you know, for more details, check my website. And I'm just like, well, I bought your book, so put the details in the book. Like, I don't get it. It was every chapter said, for more details on how to do X, check this guide on my website. So I still think that's kind of frustrating, and I actually would have really liked a full-blown nonfiction on this because I do think it's an interesting subject, but and I thought some of the topics were great. It just frustrates me that in a book, I feel like a book should be in some ways complete. It's not that you can't link to your website. It's just, where's the how-to? Where's the actionable stuff in book format? So I hope that makes sense, but it was still a great read. It was still a great concept, and I am going to check out her website, but I just thought it could have been a blog post. That's it for my borrow it books. They were fine. I enjoyed them. I'm glad I read them, but they also weren't super amazing, and I wouldn't necessarily spend your money, or at least the full price money, on them. But now I want to talk about the 2 Skip It books I had this month that I thought were not worth my time or anyone's time, so if you want to hear why, here we go. The first of those books was on audiobook. It was an Unwanted Guest. This is an author I have read before and enjoyed, but I just didn't think this book was up to snuff. It's kind of a bummer when that happens because you get to know an author and their work and you hope that it's going to be at least consistent with their other books, but sometimes that doesn't happen, and I think this was just one of those cases. This is sort of a traditional murder mystery house spin where basically the guests come together and no one knows anyone, as far as we can tell anyway. A murder happens and then, you know, people have to come together to figure out what the heck's going on. More deaths occur. I mean, it's typical, right? It's just classic like Agatha Christie and Then There Were None type style book. And I really like that. It's fun. It's a fun tropes. It's just a fun concept. But this one was just boring. The mystery wasn't that great. The characters weren't that great. So there was nothing to really make it worthwhile. And I just think there are way better mystery books out there. So I'm not going to go out of my way to recommend this to anyone ever. And I would actually say just skip it. Last on my skip it list is The Warehouse by Rob Hart. I did a full, sad, disappointed review video on this, so I'll just say briefly that I had high hopes for this. It is sort of poking fun at our modern world and what our society in an extreme sense might be, and I thought it had incredible potential, but just fell super, super short, which is disappointing. I think it had every chance to be amazing, and every time it let me down. So I don't recommend this. If you want the full details, if you're curious about this, or if you've read it and you want to vent, check out the review video for sure, but I will just say, just don't waste your time. Don't waste your time reading this, okay? Don't do it. So that's it. We did it. We have done all 14 books for the month. It was quite a few to get through, so if you're still with me, thanks for watching. I hope you had fun with me. I would love to know if you loved or hated a book last month, or even just the ones that you thought were just okay. I love talking to you about what you're reading. Before you hop off, do me a huge favor and hit that thumbs up icon. I'd so appreciate it. And if you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, but you like all things bookish, book hauls, TBRs, unhauls, all the good bookish stuff, then I'm your girl. So go ahead, press that subscribe button, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.